Okay, we'll look at the ultraviolet flow diagram of the function of general management decisions. Then we'll look at the powers and the duty, qualifications and characteristics of who should be a director. Then be able to draw a diagram of the corporate governance models. Then we'll look at the liability of directors and officers in the company. When we are talking about corporate powers, we are talking about the power and the authority of the business entity, okay, as an entity. So there are two types of corporate powers, okay? They are what are called express powers and implied powers, okay? So under the express powers, powers expressly given it by the law because of incorporation. Meaning the law has stated all the articles of association, the article of incorporation can also do as its powers. Those are express powers. Powers to sue and be sued in its own name. Okay. It has the power to purchase, use, sell properties or assets. It can borrow money, it can lend money as a company. It also has power to join partnerships as stipulated in the company laws. Then we have got implied powers, corporate powers beyond those explicitly established. These are powers that are not expressed in the constitution or in the articles of association. Okay. And if it is not written, the court has the power to say this should have been this, and it gives the written. Okay. So those are the two types of corporate powers. Unless if there's a question before we look at the ultra vires doctrine.
No question.
Okay. Now, ultra vires doctrine. It is all about the limitations that are placed within the law. If you are a manager, if you are a director, the confines of the law. So if you do anything that is outside the law, that is what is called what is confined of you. So that's that. So ultra vires doctrine holds that set it by a corporation to carry out acts that are outside its company decides to do anything that is outside of its lawful powers, then that is acting ultra vires upon what acts a corporation may undertake. Okay. So that must act within the prescribed rules as laid out in statute, case law, their articles of incorporation, and their bylaws. So the ultra vires doctrine keeps on check to ensure that companies are operating within the confines of the law. That is in simple terms. Okay.
All right.
Yes. So our next slide shows how we can draw the ultra vires doctrine flow diagram. We bring in the shareholders, we bring in the corporation, meaning the company itself, then we bring in the Attorney General who stands on behalf of government. Okay. Then all these, they ensure that they are monitored by the Ultra Vires Act so that the company does not operate outside the confines of the law. So that is the diagram, the Ultra Vires doctrine flow diagram. I'm sure it is not very complicated. We are able to remember it.
Yes, it's not complicated.
Okay. So let's look at the function of management and the powers of the shareholders. Now, they have the powers to plan. Okay. So management should plan how they are going to operate. Remember, a company begins for a certain purpose. So for the company to realize its mission and its goals, there must be some activities. These activities must be planned. Not where we just wake up, today we are doing this, tomorrow we are doing this. Look at what we are doing. Nothing is coming from our strategic plans. Then we seem to have a problem. So we have the planning. Now planning is made up of the three levels: strategic planning, tactical planning, and operational planning. Okay. So these are the general functions of management. Organizing. Okay, we have to put in place what is supposed to be in place for us to implement our activities. That is organizing. Leading. If you look at what basically we are discussing, in organization behavior, we found it to be the POC framework. Okay, planning, organizing, leading, controlling. Basically,
Yes.
just remember that. Yes. So those are the functions. Okay. So under leading, under leadership, that's where we have directing, coaching, supporting those who may not know what to do, also delegating in case you are held up with other things. All these are falling under leadership. Okay. Unless if there's a question or a comment before we look at the last part, which is controlling. So controlling is the fourth function of management. Okay. It is all about ensuring that we are operating within what we planned so that we achieve the objective.
No.
Yes. Let's look at the powers of shareholders. Okay. A company is made up of a board of directors. A company is made up of board of directors and its shareholders. So the role and powers of shareholders in a company are established and described in these three documents: the company's articles of association, the company's Act of 2006, and the Insolvency Act of 1986. This is where we find the powers of the shareholders, the legal cases that recognize the power and rights of shareholders. So also we can look at the case laws. Then we'll be able to find the powers of the shareholders. So they have the powers to make decisions that relate to managing the company. Okay. Remember, they are also the ones that appoint the board of directors. Okay. They also appoint the company auditor. So those are some of the powers of the shareholders. Okay. So what are the powers and duties of the company directors? Their powers and duties are stipulated in the Companies Act of 2013. It defines the powers and the duties that a director should take care of while acting on behalf of the company. Now, under section 179 and 166 of the same Act of 2013, it prescribes the powers and the duties of this director. So, one of the powers of a director is to make calls in respect of money and paid on shares. If we have offloaded shares on the Lusaka Stock Exchange and the share investors have bought those shares and they have not paid the money, it is your power, it is your duty to call them and ask for the money. If you do that, you cannot be cited for acting ultra vires. No, you are within the confines of your powers. The directors also have the power to issue shares, debentures. They can borrow money on behalf of the company. Okay? It is within their powers. They are able to approve financial statements and the board reports. Okay? They are able to approve bonus to employees. They are the ones who declare dividends in the company. They have the power to grant loans or give guarantee in respect of loans. Now, when we are discussing the powers of the directors, last semester, I had some challenge with some students. The directors we are discussing here are the directors who are found in the board of directors. We are not discussing the company directors like managers, the director finance, director marketing. No, these are not the ones we are discussing. Are we together?
Yes.
Yes, these are the board of directors, the powers of who? The board of directors. Okay.
Okay.
So they have the power to grant loans, they have the power to authorize the buyback of securities, they have the powers to approve amalgamation, major takeovers, acquisitions. Okay. They also have the power to diversify the business of the company. So if you are dealing in this business, the board of directors have the power to sit and approve a diversification to start doing another business. Okay. But of course, all these are done with the expertise of the managers now. So management are able to make recommendations to the board of directors who look at them. And once they understand them, then they're able to do all these that we are learning. Okay.
Okay.
Then they have also the duties. Those were the powers. When you have powers, then you must also have duties. They have the duty to act in good faith. Be honest with what you are doing. You act in accordance with the article of association. They have also the duty to act so as to promote the objectives of the company. And most of the times we tend to misuse our powers. Then we are busy promoting other interests. Ensure that what you are doing, you are promoting the objective of the company. Okay. You also have the duty to act in the best interest of the company and its shareholders. You have the duty to exercise duties with due and reasonable care. Whatever you are doing, be mindful not to get involved in a situation where your interest conflicts with the interest of the company. Make sure that if there are such situations, declare interest. Okay. You also have the duty, he cannot assign his office to any other person. You cannot say, no, me, I'm not there. Another person can be in my position as a director. No, you do it yourself. Then not to achieve an undue gain or advantage. Don't do anything that will give you a gain or a benefit or advantage using the position of the director. Okay. Those are some of the duties of the director. Unless if there's a question or a comment before we look at the qualifications and characteristics of the director. Hello? Hello?
Okay.
Okay, so we have just from looking at the duties of the director, what are the qualifications? Who should be a director? So only an individual person can become a director. You cannot appoint a company to be a director of a company. No, it's only a person who can be a director. Furthermore, a minor individual cannot become a director. So you can't appoint a minor as a director. Then at least one director of a company should be resident of the country. So if you have a company that is in this country operating, and you are appointing directors, ensure that at least one should be a Zambian or a resident of the country. Number 4, the person acting as director should be of sound mind, okay? Capable to enter into a contract, not an insolvent person. Okay, so now we can look at the flow diagram of corporate governance models. We have a number of corporate governance models that we will look at under our syllabus. The first one is the Anglo-American model. In summary, what is it all about? What are the features? Okay. Now, under the Anglo-American model of corporate governance, the shareholder rights are recognized and given importance. Remember, it is similar to stockholder approach. So you only put importance on the shareholder. Okay. Some of the features of this model are shareholder-oriented model. Okay. Then directors are rarely independent of management. So you find that the board of directors, they become part of management. Okay. So those are some of the features of the Anglo-American model. Companies are run by professional managers. Institutional investors like banks and mutual funds are portfolio investors. Most of the investors are not just mere individuals. You'll find that banks, most of them are the ones that will be investors in that company under the Anglo-American model. And its diagram looks like that. So the shareholders there, they appoint the board of directors. Then the board of directors appoint the managers, whom from what we have learned are likely to be part of management. Okay. Unless if there's a question on the Anglo-American model, then we can proceed to the German model.
Let's proceed.
Thank you. Under a German model, just come into our mind is that it has got a two-tier board. It is a two-tier board model. Okay. Remember that the German model is also called the European model. So it has got two-tier board. It has a supervisory board. The shareholders elect the members of supervisory board. Employees also elect their representative for supervisory board. Then there will be another board of management or management board. The supervisory board appoints and monitors the management board. So that is what happens under the Germany model. It's a two-tier board model. We have the supervisory board and the management board. So the shareholders appoint supervisory board. Supervisory board appoint management board. Okay. Then we have the Japanese model. Okay.
Japanese model.
Part of the capital through banking. In Japan, them capital is raised through banking and other financial institutions. Not like here where if we want to raise capital, we would sell the shares to people who have got money to invest. In Japan, they prefer banks and financial institutions as investors. Now, what does this simply mean is that banks and financial institutions become interested party because they are also like shareholders of these companies. Okay. So shareholders and many banks together will appoint the board of directors. Okay, so the shareholders together with the banks, because they've also invested, so they are more or less like shareholders also. So they will sit together and appoint the board of directors and the company president. Okay. So that is what is under the Japanese model. Under the social control model, corporate governance, it argues for full-fledged stakeholder representation in the board. Stakeholder representation. Now, according to this model, creation of stakeholders board over and above the shareholders determined board of directors would improve the internal control systems of the corporate governance. So with the social control model, it is not only the shareholders who will do the appointment of the directors, even stakeholders. Last time we differentiated shareholders from stakeholders, or stockholders from stakeholders. Yes, so all those who have interest, who are affected and who can affect the company, they become part of stakeholders. They can also sit with the shareholders to appoint the directors. That is in the social control model. I don't know in which country this is practiced. Do we have this here?
Never do it.
Exactly. But it's there for learning purposes. Okay. So the last one, the last model is the Indian model. So in India, there are mainly three types of companies: private companies, public companies, and the public sector undertakings. So each of these companies has a strict kind of shareholding pattern. So each company has its own way of shareholding. So the corporate governance model in India is a mix of Anglo-American and German model. So if we are discussing the Indian model, just bring the German model and the Anglo-American model combined together, we form the Indian model of corporate governance. Unless if there's a question, these are the 5 models that are supposed to be tackled under our syllabus. So finally, let's look at the RMBCA 1984. In the first lecture notes that we did, we didn't include this, but when I was going through some of the assignments and the study guide, I found a question about RMBCA 1984. So we incorporated it so that we briefly just have the concept of what it is. So the RMBCA 1984, these RMBCA are abbreviations, meaning Revised Model Business Corporation Act. Okay, is a model act prepared by the Committee on Corporate Laws of the section of business law of the American Bar. Okay, so in 2002, it was followed by 24 states using it. So the MBCA has been influential in shaping standards for United States corporate laws. So most of the laws that are used in United States, they are influenced by the MBCA of 1984. Okay. So the MBCA was created after the World War II in 1950 due to variation in how states defined corporation. Different countries were defining corporation in different ways. So they decided to find a general or a universal way of defining corporation. And this came up using the Revised Model Business Corporation Act of 1984. Okay. So basically, that is the RMBCA 1984. And I'm sure in your study guide under the assessment questions, I think that's where I saw they wanted you to define, oh yes, what does RMBCA stand for? Okay, so that's that. Unless if there are a question before we look at these 6 questions that are here. Okay, so at the end of this study, you have these questions which you can practice and see how you are able to use what we have studied in our lecture notes and answer them. What does RMBCA stand for? Explain what implied powers are. What is the ultra-vires doctrine? Define prox with reference to corporate finance. Prox, it's all about doing something on behalf of somebody. Okay. Sometimes even when we are signing documents, you see people writing PP. Okay. That's prox.
Then, so P is prox.
Okay, that's the prox person. So I'm not the owner. Yes, I'm not the owner. I'm doing it on behalf of somebody.
We've just been signing.
Oh, interesting. Learning is interesting. Now we have learned.
Yes.
Then three responsibilities of a director. Then you look at the duties of loyalty means. Okay. So you have to be loyal to the company. So far, this is what we were supposed to cover under corporate governance.